If you had asked me that on 2020, what's on your bingo card, it wouldn't have been a pandemic and it wouldn't have been selling my book at 2 weeks.
What's good? I'm Nikisha Elise Williams, and this is Black and Published, bringing you the journeys of writers, poets, playwrights, and storytellers of all kinds. Today's guest is Jennifer Baker, author of the YA novel Forgive Me Not, a story that centers the life, loves, and struggles of a teenage Black girl to explore the pitfalls and failures of mass incarceration and carceral systems writ large.
They're like really bad crimes. And there are other things that are crimes that I don't necessarily agree with listing as crimes. You know what I mean? There are things that people just need and things that people do. And I believe in accountability, but I don't know that the carceral system is accountability.
If Jen Baker's name sounds familiar to you, it's because she's a living legend who has always done the work to help people navigate the industry as either writer or publishing professional. In our conversation, Jen explains how she stayed motivated to continue writing while working for years in the industry she was trying to break into as a creative. Plus, the reality show that sparked the idea for her novel. And the reason she believes individual power is the first step toward dismantling the penal system as we know it. That and more is next, when Black and Published continues. All right. So Jen, first question, when did you know that you were a writer?
My family is very supportive, honestly, of the arts and just what you wanted to do. So I guess when I was a kid, because I used to draw and write. And so they were like, oh, yeah, you can keep doing that. And my aunt, one of my aunts, she helped me make a book. So we did the cardboard and all that stuff. And I made a book. And I think it was about Santa Claus or something. So technically, I had my first book. I was self-published at probably 6.
So then that your family always being so supportive of the arts, was writing just something that you always wanted to do?
Yeah, I liked telling stories, and reading was very encouraged, particularly by the women in my family. They are active readers and they just humored me. You know, I mean, you're a mom. Sometimes you're humoring kids.
I think what I find funny is that you talk about humoring kids and then they grow up to be adults who then want to be still entertained in that way. So your family humored you. Like, sure, let's make a book about the story that you've written about Santa Claus. And then here you are decades later and making a living as a writer. So what was that trajectory like for you?
I went to high school for writing too. So in New York City, I don't know if it's the same where you are, you apply for high schools. And so I chose a creative writing high school, John Bowne. That was my school for 4 years. And then I got my bachelor's at the City College of New York. And I always preface this, especially when I talk to people who go into publishing, is that I got a full ride to CUNY. So I came out of my bachelor's with no debt, which is very lucky.
Amen.
Right. It's very lucky. And I then went into publishing because I don't really make a living writing. I make a living doing all the other things I do. Like being a project manager, being an editor. I make money from writing, but I would not be able to eat if I was only doing that. I write very, very slowly. I'm methodical, but I'm very, very slow. In terms of if I needed money now, that would not be happening. So, and then I got my master's in it. So, but I was working in book publishing the whole time and then doing residencies. If I was able to get a residency, going to workshops. So I was using PTO, paid time off, to go to all these things. So I never stopped, quote unquote, studying writing. Like I was taking money and often not getting scholarships because I made too much, which is hilarious. And at the time I was making like at one point less than 30K, at one point 35K, at one point 40K.
In New York City?
In New York City. Yeah. Yeah. And doing and taking this money and going to writing conferences and stuff like that. And so
which are not cheap.
They are not cheap. And certain ones are really, really expensive. Like bread loaf. Bread loaf is over $4,000. I never went to bread loaf, by the way, because that number just like made my heart stop. But, certain are like 2,000 if you put everything together of traveling to, and, summer is peak traveling time. So those costs go up. And so, it just showed like, it's not to say people who don't do them aren't dedicated, but I was willing to do that to keep studying because I just didn't get enough from my MFA program. And I knew I just needed to constantly get feedback. So for me, I was just always invested in it and I invested in it what I could, which is also why I point out that I came out of bachelor's with no debt.
That's my next question. Was your MFA fully funded?
No, it was not. No, it was not. I was going to work and I was working full time as an editorial assistant, again,
Making
under
no
30K.
money.
And then from 8 to 10, I would go to the new school Monday through Thursday for 2 years and then come back home and then go to work the next
morning.
Yeah. And so I think I was one of the few people who was working full time because I say this mostly about the cohort because most of the people I went to the grad school program, and this is something I got my first published essay in Poets and Writers talking about, is the attrition rate of writers, especially in MFA programs, because a lot do not continue. There's so many people I was in all these writing workshops that I was taking time off from work to go to. So many of them stopped.
Wow.
So many stopped, because it's hard. So this is like a long game thing for some of us. For some of us, it might work out the gate. For others of us, I'm in my 40s and technically I published my first book, but obviously I'm sure like, and people you've talked to on this great podcast now, it's not the first book you wrote. It's not the first book you finished. It might be the one that got sold that first. So the YA is the book I finished and sold first. Meanwhile, I've been writing short stories and novels and I have more in the works, but it was the one I was like, it's the one that got me my agent. It's the one that, got me the book deal and all that stuff because everyone's like, oh, so you're a kidlit writer. And I'm like, well, I'm not, but I'm not only kind of like other folks, like Jacqueline Woodson doesn't only write for young readers. Renee Watson has a new book coming out that's for adults. So she doesn't. A lot of people don't only write for this demographic. And sometimes it's where you land because it's what you finished and what you were able to sell first. And then that becomes your definer.
Can you talk about what the journey has been like working on stories, working on novels, while working in publishing at different levels and stages of the industry? And for all intents and purposes, struggling as a writer. Like, what kind of mind fuck is that?
Because you said it.
It's got to be one.
Well, also, I think what benefited me in my journey was that I did work primarily in academic publishing full time. And so that is very different from working in trade. So that it really is, I'm very good at compartmentalization. Whether that is healthy or not, I don't know, but it helps.
Right.
And so I did interview for a lot of trade jobs, and all jobs are very competitive. But I was really bad at writing copy. I was awful at writing copy for books. And that's a test they give you when you're an editorial assistant. And so with academic, I didn't have to really take tests. So I was able to get in that way. So that was helpful.
I love it so much.
So that was very helpful. And then after you start learning, I was copy editing and proofreading. I took a class for that. And so I still do that on occasion as well, because I started working in production, and production is the area where you're working with the book technically. You're not necessarily developmental editing it. You're not, copy editing and proofreading, as you know, are very different things. You're looking at continuity, accuracy. You might do a little fact checking, but that may not be part of your job. You're looking at grammar, commas, all that stuff, language and stuff, and asking a lot of questions. And so I was looking at books in that way, which was helpful because then the creative self got to enjoy the creative thing. I wasn't worried about what was on the New York Times bestseller list. I wasn't worried about if, how people were talking about the acquisitions of books. It allowed me to separate it. And then I started to work with trade publishers, freelance, copy editing, proofreading, and later developmental editing. And so I knew about publishing because it's not that in academic, they don't talk about it in certain ways of sales of products, but I was removed. You know, when you're a freelancer, when you're in production, when you're in certain areas, again, academic or nonprofit in certain ways, you're not hearing it in the same way of what you're writing. And so that helped. I think if I was brought up completely in trade, that would have messed me up even more. I think that would have messed with my head. Not to say that doesn't get in your head a little bit, but I'm who I am. This is what I wrote. Someone bought it. Someone believes in it. Because I think that happens to writers too. And I experienced that when even after people buy your book or acquire your book, they're like, well, crap, I don't want to disappoint you.
I'm there right now.
Right. And it's like they bought the book. So trust that we're in this relationship and it is going to be what it's going to be. And also honor where you're at.
Cool, child. I'm going to get off your couch and we're going to continue this interview before you be therapying me. Okay.
That could be a whole other episode. It was like, oh, so let's talk about.
I am looking at these edits and I'm just like, I don't know. Oh, maybe.
No, that's real. I got that from my editor, who's Stacey Barney, Black woman, been in the business for as long as me, if not longer, but mostly editorial. She started out in adult, moved to children's. And she gives long editorial letters. And people warned me, Nikisha. People were like, she gives long editorial letters. I'm telling you. And I'm like, I can handle it. That's great. That's exactly what I need. I need a hard ass to push me. And then you get that letter and you're like, oh, I have feelings. like, I have feelings. And then I had that moment of like, well, why did you buy the book if you have this many edits and all that? So, you know, and like I went through all of that. And then it was like, can you give me this in like 6 weeks to 2 months? And I was like,
maybe.
I didn't know how to fix half the things she was telling me. It took me 2 more months. I was like, I don't know. It's a valid critique. Don't know how to fix it. And sometimes I just needed to figure it out. But she was also open to that. So I just want to extend that is if it takes you more time to fix those holes, take that time and be honest that you need that time, or just get on the phone with them and be like, hey, I think this, what do you think? Because that's what the editors are there for. And that's what I needed to do. I didn't end up having convos with Stacey as much. It just took me longer to figure out the things. And then she liked them. And I was like, okay. But I'm like, you ain't getting this in 2 months. You ain't.
So how long did you work on what became Forgive Me Not?
8 years on and off. I looked back before the book came out and I was like, holy crap, I've been working on this since 2014. That's when it first began. And so I sold it in 2020 in late September, early October of 2020. And then we did 2 more years of edits. My book was pushed out a year because of timing things. So it was actually supposed to come out last year. Which actually, it worked out that it didn't. It was supposed to come out last August, and then it got pushed to October, and then it got pushed to this August. I was very bummed about that when that decision was made. But my agent also helped me out because she was like, you don't want a book that's crash. A crash is a book that's done in a very short amount of time in production. No one wants a crash because then it limits your publicity potential because no one has the opportunity to really read it.
Considering what was happening with you professionally in 2022, and I know you recently wrote an essay about this as well, do you think having that year of breath space between leaving publishing in a very public way and your book coming out gave you time to come back into the industry with some removed feelings, but then also just to enjoy the space of being a writer and not everything being about, oh, did you hear what happened at? And did you hear what happened to?
Yeah. So emotionally, I think so. I think there's also that aspect of me that understands from a business side that that's a monetizable moment, if we're being completely honest, right? It was
Facts.
like if I had the book out, or even pre-order links, because pre-order links weren't available until the very end of the year, because they're usually not available till at least 9 months, at the earliest 9 months before a book comes out. It could have employed more sales for a book. I don't like, that's not a guarantee. But also this was pre-Elon on Twitter. Twitter is my biggest platform. And so those things in terms of reach, it's not just sales, it's reach, because you want to reach your community. So emotionally, I probably would have compartmentalized and been like, I need to sell a book. And we're here to talk about the book. And this can help me get more visibility to have a real conversation with young readers and older readers and all this stuff about issues that are important. And sometimes that's helpful, is to utilize sometimes really crappy experiences to help get a larger important message out. Because again, it's not simply about, oh, I could have sold the book. It's like, I have a conversation about criminal justice and the carceral system that I really want to engage people in. And so that would have been helpful, but doesn't mean it would have been healthy.
I want to go to what you said about, having a conversation about the carceral system and justice, and what Renee Watson says in the cover blurb copy about what it means to have a second chance. Was that always the theme that you were writing toward when you started Forgive Me Not 8 years ago, or has it changed over the course of those 8 years, especially with the decline of, if there ever was a relationship between the carceral system, the criminal legal system, and the Black community? It's definitely declined from what it was in 2014, almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah, my biggest question was, what does it take to be forgiven? And that's why I center a young girl of color. So I really wanted to look at that. And I think underlying that, I also wanted to look at kind of the misogyny that young women of color face. Because, you have Violetta, who is the one who is incarcerated, and then her older brother, who's this charmer, who's a star, who has his own plot line, right? But he's also a mirror into how the parents and the family is making this decision for their daughter in the hopes that it will help her. It will make her better. It will rehabilitate her. And seeing something wrong with her, which happens to young women of color, in particular, Black young women, there's something wrong. Right. And I really did want to look at that too. I wanted to look at forgiveness. Like, if we're not talking about innocence or guilt, if we're not talking about, did she do it? Did she not do it? We're talking about, if someone did something and it is really how do you move forward from that? And how do you move forward from that with other people? That was the question of just like, what does forgiveness look like? And so the name stuck. This has always been the title, Forgive Me Not.
So then if you were always examining forgiveness, what was the reception when you did sell it? And how did you feel after, 8 years of going through the motions, trying to get it together to, the point where every author wants to be, and where you were professionally as you were giving that opportunity to other authors?
So I had sold it again 2020, and I hadn't yet accepted the job to be an acquisitions editor. I would get that offer literally a month and a half, 2 months after I sold the book. But the process was like, I have to forget it. Like, it was the pandemic, man. I mean, we're still in a pandemic, but 2020 was that was a messed up year. Messed up. So I was like, we aren't selling anything. We're all going to die. The world is ending. The election's coming. I'm terrified. Like, my mind was on just where we are as a world and country.
And trying to survive.
Yeah. And so I was like, there are worse things if this book does not sell. Like, we have a lot going on. So my agent's like, I'm going to send it out and we'll see what happens. And I was like, whatever. like it was like, like there's anxiety, but I'm just like, there's so much. I can't even be pressed about this. And so she sent it to Stacy, and Stacy emailed and said, hey, does anyone else, can I have a day to read this? And so my agent's like, came to me and said, are you okay with this? And I said, yeah. Well, again, I was like in this whatever phase. I was like, okay. I was like, she's not going to read it overnight. It's fine. She did read it overnight. She read it and she emailed my agent first thing in the morning and said, I'd like to set up a call with Jennifer. And so she and I set up a call on Friday, and she went to her board. So there are editorial meetings that happen. And for some groups, those editorial meetings are very crucial to make a decision of whether an editor can acquire a book or not. So she had her editorial meeting on Tuesday, and she made an offer on Thursday. So I sold my book within 2 weeks. And so that's how my story happened. So I was very, very shocked to sell a book in 2 weeks. I did not. And if you had asked me that on 2020, what's on your bingo card, it wouldn't have been a pandemic and it wouldn't have been selling my book at 2 weeks.
But there was a pandemic and you did sell your book in 2 weeks.
So I expected it to be months because I worked in publishing, right? I'm like, I work in publishing. I'm like, this can take months. Again, this year is awful. I was like, this can take however it takes. So
it's not going to happen. Yeah.
Or it can never happen at all. And then I move on to the next book, which would have been fine too. I would have survived. So.
Woo, that's a great outlook to have. That's kind of how I was. And at some point I'll tell this story publicly on this podcast in full. But I think from the day that we went on submission, I sold my book in a week.
Yeah, that happens. It absolutely happens.
So, and that blew my mind, as it seemed to have blown yours when you sold yours in 2 weeks in 2020. So we've talked about the book. We've talked about publishing. This conversation is everywhere. Let's just get to the book. Like,
it's everywhere and everything all at once.
Right. And I might just let it ride the whole way. Forgive Me Not. So can you read a little bit from it? And then we will get into Violetta and her brother and the trials.
Sure.
Jen Baker's Forgive Me Not follows 15-year-old Violetta Chen Samuels, who's arrested and incarcerated after a DUI kills her 7-year-old sister. In this near-future world, Violetta can either be sent to prison, forgiven by her family and sent home, or face the trials to earn their forgiveness. When her family chooses the trials, Violetta is forced to reckon with what she did and why she did it, a meditative tension where she must determine whose forgiveness is more important, her family's or her own. Here's Jen.
I'll read a letter. So just a preface for folks. Violetta is, as mentioned, the main character who unfortunately caused the death of her little sister, 7-year-old Vivian. So she has a hard time communicating with those who are trying to communicate with her from the quote unquote outside, but it's kind of cathartic for her to write to her little sister in a way. So I'm going to read the first letter, which I think is the shortest of the letters. Hey, Viv. Where I am now, we only get shoes you can fasten with snaps or Velcro. No shoelaces because you don't need to know why. Every time I bend over to put my shoes on, I think about how long it took me to figure out how to tie them in the first place. Vin showed me how when I was 5. He did rabbit ears. You learned super quick at that age. Not rabbit ears. You did the 1 string, 2 strings fold and new string way. I thought I could help you with that. Turns out you didn't need me. I don't know why I'm talking about this. It just came to me when I was putting my shoes back on while I wait for Callie to visit. You know what I always admired about you? That you never showed fear. When I was 7, I was sort of afraid of all the things. At amusement parks, Dad carried me toward rides until I screamed so hard I almost burst an eardrum. The most I could do was the teacups or the merry-go-rounds. Nothing in the air. But you were right at the height line for some of the smaller roller coasters, and you sped through to sit in front so you could see every hill or drop as it happened. On roller coasters, I kept my eyes shut, feeling the rise and fall right in my belly. I was always thankful when they were over while you went back for more. You weren't afraid to fail either. We all took swimming lessons together, and you couldn't get your legs and arms to move in the water at the same time. That was surprisingly one of the few things I caught on to quicker than you. Maybe the only thing. Being in the water made me feel free to relax and let go. My whole body floated right to the top. Underwater, I could see some of the things that sank to the bottom of the pool, like Band-Aids and balls of hair. Even the smell of chlorine helped me relax. I'd look over while floating or doing froggy kick or freestyle to see you struggling in your favorite cow print bathing suit and matching swim cap. Getting your hands to slip in and out of the water, but not splashing your legs hard enough to move forward. I watched the instructors watch you, how they grabbed you when your arms flailed and held you up when you had trouble keeping your body afloat. And sometimes, I'm sorry to say this, I was glad to see you fail. At the same time, I admired you for trying. It made me feel better to know there was something, even one thing you couldn't master that I did. You nailed Mandarin, cooking with Mom, making all the friends wherever you went. In the pool, you never cried, though you got frustrated. a lot. You'd stomp up the kiddie stairs from the pool to the floor, making sure everyone heard the smack of your wet feet against the tile. Next time, I'd tell you in the car on our way home. Mom or Dad would treat us to ice cream while our skin dried from the chlorine, the smell of it clinging to us. Looking back, I realized I didn't offer to help you. The instructors tried, but even when they held you, you couldn't get it. Nowadays, I wonder if maybe the words of a big sister would have helped. If I'd showed you on your bedroom floor or in the bathtub or even in that senior center pool we visited twice a week in summer. I think about these things a lot. I wonder if I was a good big sister to you while you were here. I'd like to believe I was. Then again, I wouldn't be where I am if that was the case, would I? I'll try to write again soon. Letta.
Thank you. So your book is set in like this near future world where instead of young people who have committed a crime automatically going to trial and a jury and being sentenced to juvenile detention centers, there is like this reform that has happened where the people who they've wronged have to choose what the punishment is going to be. Why was that the vehicle you chose to examine how forgiveness happens?
It was spurred by that show, Forgive or Forget. So the premise of Forgive or Forget is that you mess up and do something. Well, the initial years, then it changed, but you did something messed up, like you cheated on your wife or you bankrupted somebody. And you know what you do? You take them on a national syndicated television show with a live studio audience to tell your business and then say, and I'd like them to forgive me. And so the show goes to the person and is like, would you like to come on this show to talk about what happened? And someone goes to a door. And if the person is behind the door, it means they're open to discussion. Doesn't mean necessarily they totally forgive you, but it means maybe you have a chance. Or if you open the door and no one is there, their face will pop up on a screen, right? And so that happens in the first chapter. Their face pops up on a screen and they show a video of like, this is why I don't forgive you. This is why I chose not to get on that plane. And so that's how it first happened. I was just like, this is so ridiculous. What if this was how carceral systems were? What if it was the person you wronged that made the decision? And maybe it's more than one thing, right? Because restorative justice is a thing. So I really wanted to think about, well, if her family was the one making this decision, I feel like her family would want her to get quote unquote better, right? And so that's when the trials and a form of quote unquote rehabilitation comes up, because these are their words. These are like the Department of Corrections words: restorative justice, rehabilitation, obedience, reducing recidivism. You know, that's their thinking. And so the thing isn't changed really. It's just who gets to be able to say that they're the one making the decision. Because Randall is their mediator or go-between or something for the family. And he's kind of dictating what happens, even though the parents are like,
like he's very insistent upon what the parents should do, even though the parents are supposed to be running the show, which leads me on page 48. Counselor Susan is talking to Violetta, and she says, your job is to show your dedication to forgiveness. How does one show dedication to forgiveness when to be forgiven at some point, it's a daily thing? Like you have to choose it. Like it's an active choice to forgive someone.
Right. And she's separated from her family. So it's not as though they are seeing what's happening to her every day. They're seeing that what happens with these trials because they're allowed to see video of what happens. So they could see video in real time, or they could see it after the fact of what the trial is. And so and then Randall is there, right? This representative of the state is there to say that, well, here's the video and this is how it looks. And this is what we've monitored and this is what we've observed. And she's like a test case. But it's so weird. But it also is akin to what is happening because people who are incarcerated can be made to work. So how is that part of, you know what I mean? Like, why is this part of the sentence? Why is this part of like, what is the point?
And you raise that question here on page 47. You say, and at the same time, there was the question of how juvenile inmates could support the economy. And I think if we look at
Mm-hmm.
the carceral system as a whole, there are counties and cities and towns across the country where the prison is the largest employer, is the place that keeps the economy of that place going. The fact that incarceration and mass incarceration specifically employs and enriches so many people and cares not about forgiveness or those people actually being rehabilitated is a question that I think looms over this book because of how carelessly these kids are treated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the emotional toll of it, because also on top of that, it's supposed to teach them a lesson.
And I think that you touch on that with the book because, like, you have the counselor who's supposed to be there for the young people who are incarcerated. And then you have the mediator who's supposed to be helping the family navigate how they're choosing to make sure that their child is rehabilitated before she comes home and is forgiven. And you have all of these well-meaning systems that are supposed to be in place that are then warped and corrupted by people who either don't believe in it, have an ulterior motive, or just because that's what humans do. Like, even the best laid intentions cannot come out right just because of how human nature is. And so then I wonder, in writing this book and examining forgiveness and what it means to have justice and fairness for those who are actually wronged within a family, do you have any ideas about what that should look like in actuality in the country we live in now?
Yeah, I am a big proponent of therapy, like good therapy. And maybe that's a very simplistic answer, but I don't know that everyone, can be helped, right? I'm not going to say should, I'm going to say can. And what does that look like for an individual? Because hurt people, and sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's just a bigger thing. But I feel like we never look at the root, right? Like the unhoused, carceral systems, da 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 da. It's never like, again, I'm saying never, but I feel like we're not asking the right questions of what people need. Violetta needed to be listened to, and she didn't have the language to ask for that.
Mm-hmm.
But she needed certain things. And so that's what I'm working for her to get to, is this sense of agency. And she owns what she does, but I think she needs to own other things about her that allow her to be seen, allow her to really get her humanity on the forefront rather than continually be named based on that. So if you are in a space where you have a number, if you are in a space where you were reminded everything you did, if you are in a space that is decrepit, if you are in a space where they don't give you good food, if you are in a space where you are isolated, if you are in a space where you can't move freely, your freedoms are being taken so much.
Mm-hmm.
How do you expect people to act when you're taking something from them rather than being like, well, what do you need? And I get it. They're like really bad crimes. And there are other things that are crimes that I don't necessarily agree with listing as crimes. You know what I mean? There are things that people just need and things that people do. And I believe in accountability, but I don't know that the carceral system is accountability. It is caging. It is mistreatment. It is removing freedoms from a person and then saying, you need to work for those freedoms. You need to earn this back. And I don't know that forgiveness is that. I don't know that forgiveness is, you need to earn this from me. And it's complicated. I think trust is one thing. You know, like if you've lied to me, I think we need to build trust again. But like, how do you even do that? You do that through actions. But if I never talk to you, if you're far away, how do I build that with you? So I think it's very specific and complicated for a character like Violetta, which is why I chose that and why it came to me. But I also understand that it is a bigger question in terms of other topics. And so I don't want to minimize it and say, well, this fits every case. But for Violetta, I think this fits her. And I think, considering I live near a county courthouse and then a place where people are detained, that a lot of the times it's not for violent stuff. The people who are detained near me, it's not for violent stuff. So if it's not violent, why are they detained? And why do they have to now go to court and pay for a lawyer and do this and do that? Like, what is it that we're putting these folks through?
I just think that in listening to you talk about the systems, that these systems and infrastructures for incarceration are built so young, the school to prison pipeline. But beyond that, it's clear that just as there is a way for young people to go down the quote unquote right path, and there's a system and infrastructure of elite daycares and private prep schools and college and Ivy League and the internships and da 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 da. Even, we talked about writing, the residencies, the fellowships, the MFA, all of these marquee type of things to do to check a list to get to wherever you're going to go in life. There is the same on the other end, where if you fail your reading scores or if you're labeled a behavior problem, that there is a system and an infrastructure in place that will then funnel you in a different direction. And I know here where I am in Jacksonville, there are actual schools that operate similar to prisons, and that the kids aren't free to move about. They aren't allowed to have extracurricular activities or go on field trips. Everything is very restricted, and it's supposedly the last stop before detention. So it's supposed to be like this alternative space, but it's not. And so all of those systems and infrastructures are built from the youngest of ages. And then it's almost like a pinball machine where it's happenstance, luck, and chance on where you get to go. And we see that in the book, like Violetta's brother is very much the golden child, where the system and infrastructure is built for him to succeed. He just needs to follow the path. Whereas Violetta, she's starting off on that path with one wrong turn, one pinball swipe to the left, and then she's off in another path. And now she's funneling through that system and infrastructure. And everything is so grossly unfair, but then built that way to operate as it was supposed to. I guess the question, if I have any, is, do you have any encouragement for young people who are in this very vulnerable place in their lives, in their adolescence, in their youth, in their teen years, where they're having to navigate these systems and they are really outside of their control?
The thing that I wish I asked more questions. And it's not challenging to ask a question, right? But we're kind of in that space, especially now, where people are like, take away books, take away education, take away, because it is trying to take away freedom of thought. And I feel like the access to information, as well as the encouragement to think more and to ask these questions and to interact more with others, is kind of a stepping stone rather than just going with it. Because I feel like a lot of us, especially us being two Black women, we are the receiver of people just doing what it takes. There are things that, you go with because it's like, okay, but there are things you're just like, well, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? What's the benefit? And it's usually power. And so I feel like what I've said to people I've been speaking with is that at the end of the book, I want Violetta to have power, and I want young people to know you do have power. And power looks different ways. But the power to say you will do this, the power to do this, the power to say this, the power to da-da-da-da-da, are things you have and can utilize to empower yourself to a point where you understand maybe you're not wrong. Maybe the system is wrong. And you are operating within a system that a lot of people are just trying to survive in. And that's understandable. And it's not great at the same time. So I don't know if that quite answers your question. I just feel like there's this individual power that we need to understand before we even get to an understanding of collective power, because I feel like we've seen what collective power can look like, and then it can fall apart. And I think 2020 was a very good example of that, as well as 2017, if we remember. Where is it in 2023? It's not to say it's not existent, but we need to recognize individual power first and then build with those communities who are ready to do that work as well.
But even beyond that, I think one of the things that isn't as explicit in the book, but I'm certainly taking away from it now, and in light of our conversation, is that when you come into power, that doesn't mean that the only way you can maintain power is by punishing and penalizing. And I feel like the systems of the world have been maintained by the threat of punishment and the threat of penalization. And that is seen on a global scale in the grandest of ways in the world, but then also in very small and intricate ways, and just even bullying that happens between students, or what happens to Violetta in the book, in how people who are in positions of power, when they have the opportunity to use that power in a way that hurts someone else, they choose to do so. And I think that is something that our carceral system as a whole should examine about itself, in that you are literally holding people's lives in the balance. And the choice that we continue to make in upholding in systems of incarceration is to punish and to penalize, instead of examining what led to these people being in this position. Why are they here? What do they need? What don't they have? What didn't they have? And again, it's not that everybody can't be helped or can't be served or should be helped or should be served, but we have to look at what is underlying all of these systems and things in place. And a lot of times it's just having the ability to punish and penalize because you have power.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? It's wild. And it's something people hope to ascend to, which is also what I've realized over time is, like, I think people see power not just as wealth, but as though power over people. And maybe like that is in tandem with people's thinking of wealth, but just also, being a woman who's dated men, sometimes that power dynamic is just like, you really just need to have a hold on something.
Right. To be over something or somebody.
Yeah. And it's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Wild times. So let's go to the speed round in this little game before we go for the morning. What is, if you have one, your favorite book? Your favorite book of the moment, of the hour?
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. I will say I am a huge fan of Big, the picture book by Vashti Harrison. That is a finalist for the National Book Award. Yes, Vashti. I love that book so much.
Awesome. Now I got to get it. Who is your favorite author?
Zora Neale Hurston.
What do you think is the best book to movie or TV adaptation?
I think the best book to movie adaptation, and that I like the written material as much as the film, Brokeback Mountain. But like, if I was saying a book I didn't like and an adaptation I love, Devil Wears Prada. The movie is fantastic. I did not like the book.
That movie is perfection.
It's such a good movie. Oh my God, so good.
If money were no option, where would you go? What would you do? And where would you live?
Singapore. It's really great there. The food is amazing. It's so clean. It was easy to get around. The food was amazing. I met there's a lot of American tourists there too. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing for Singapore, but I just loved it. So
name 3 things on your bucket list.
I want to go to Thailand because that looks amazing. I'm still considering whether or not I want to jump out of a plane. And I really want to learn to swim better. I started and I stopped because of some nerve issues, but I really want to get back and be good at swimming.
What brings you joy?
Sleep, but mostly being in community with other people like you and my friends and everybody. So I think that helped me survive during the pandemic. I think, emotionally, we needed each other. And so being in community with so many wonderful people, that brought me joy. And celebrating other people too. Everyone's doing some great stuff.
What brings you peace?
The gym. I've joined a gym again, a lady gym, Lucille Roberts. And I find so much peace going there. Just working out. Everyone's polite. Everyone respects everybody. It's just it's just a very good energy and it brings me peace. Moving and all that stuff brings me peace.
Ooh. So our game is called Rewriting the Classics. Classic is however you define it. Name one book you wished you would have written.
I mean, it goes back to Zora. Their eyes are watching God. I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have when I first read it in high school. But those sentences are ridiculous. So good.
Name one book where you want to change the ending, and how would you do it?
I like the Wicked series. I don't know if people read Wicked by Gregory Maguire. It was very big in the early 20s and based off the Broadway show and upcoming movie. I didn't love how that ended. I didn't love the first book specifically in the series. As the series went on, it just kind of dragged out in a way. And I think he could have just stopped at the first book, or he could have kind of brought some more things full circle rather than just stretching out the lineage. Yeah.
And now for the shady question. Name a book that you think is overrated and why, or overtaught, Professor.
Moby Dick. Why? Like, why? It's inner turmoil. I get it. But, just the whole thing, like, it stretches so long. That book could have been half the length and could have been super tight.
Isn't it like 1,000 pages?
It's, and I had to read that in high school. And I was like, why? I don't understand.
I never read
it was like all the metaphors. So that was how I was learning metaphor, was through Moby Dick. Like, coffin, save me. What does that mean? I'm still like thinking about it 20 plus years later. I get the respect for it, but I just think the execution was not there. I just don't think it was there.
It wasn't giving.
It's giving too long.
So my final question for you today. When you are dead and gone and among the ancestors, what would you like someone to write about you and the legacy of words and work that you've left behind?
I think mostly that Jennifer aimed to make things more available to people and empower people to know that their stories matter, what they do matters, and to respect other people and their time. I just want to go out and be remembered as someone who is there for others, and also hopefully there for myself, but there for others.
There for yourself, though. That's a good one. I'm going to end it right there.
Big thank you to Jen Baker for being here today on Black and Published. Make sure you check out Jen's debut novel, Forgive Me Not, out now from Penguin Random House. And if you're not following Jen, check her out on the socials. She's at JBakerNYC on Instagram and Twitter. That's our show for the week. If you like this episode and want more Black and Published, head to our Instagram page. It's at Black and Published, and that's BLK and Published. There, I've posted a bonus clip from my interview with Jen about the disinformation that celebrity books are the books that save publishing companies. Make sure you check it out and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll holla at y'all next week when our guest will be Kim Johnson, author of Invisible Sun.
I really wrote this book because people wanted to move on from the pandemic. And having been familiar with being trauma-informed, and especially racially trauma-informed, you can't move past things. If you want to heal, you actually have to process it. And so many people still have yet to process what they experienced in 2020.
That's next week on Black and Published. I'll talk to you then. Peace.